Hi guys, so today we're going to talk about the Hurricane Sandy that happened in 2012 in New York. Hurricane Sandy was a low pressure system that was classified as a tropical depression and it was formed off the northeast coast of Nicaragua in Caribbean Sea. And later on, it became the Category 1 hurricane before turning north towards the US coast. And on October 29th, the Hurricane Sandy made the landfall in New York. And when it happened, the organizations and municipalities started delivering more than 10 million alerts to the community on how to evacuate and where to go to avoid overcrowding in specific areas. And emergency managers started scanning the community to determine which parts of the city are at high risk and find what critical infrastructure is present. So the closure of the subway and the healthcare evacuation was the start of it, and the evacuation of and closure of the several hospitals led to crowded conditions at facilities that remained open. And one of the big challenges that city faced was continuing the treatment needs for people living in chronic conditions in affected communities. So the city, working with the state's Department of Health, they brought mobile primary care units into impacted areas to avoid some hospitals getting overcrowded. And talking about the impact, Sandy is considered the fourth most expensive storm in U.S. history, and more than 600,000 housing units were destroyed in New Jersey and New York. And the government of New York estimates that 19 billion in damage was inflicted on city alone. And 5 years after Sandy, more than 1,000 New Jersey residents were still unable to return home. Hurricane Sandy also had an impact on the 2012 US presidential election and caused a debate on the effect of global warming. And I have a little video for you guys at the end. It has a little more information on the effect of global warming. And as a result of all of this, the Hurricane Sandy served a wake-up call for many in the region, where New York started investing in rebuilding their outdated infrastructure meant to prevent flooding. And even in 2019, some East Coast cities were still pushing for additional funding to rebuild dunes and barriers destroyed by Sandy.
This is going to be a big and powerful storm. Millions of people are going to be affected all across the eastern seaboard. I think everybody is taking the appropriate preparations. Our thoughts and prayers go out to all people who are potentially affected.
This extreme storm is related to the warmer ocean temperatures. Tropical storms get their energy from the oceans. Warmer oceans give it more energy.
An explosion at a Consolidated Edison power plant.
More than 1 million people in 11 states are already without power.
Breaking news now from the borough of Queens, New York, where a fire there has destroyed at least 50 homes.
The Battery Tunnel in Lower Manhattan, this gets you out of the city. The tunnel is totally flooded.
And now this water is rushing over the edge of Lower Manhattan.
This was a devastating storm, maybe the worst that we have ever experienced. Many people have lost their homes. People have lost their lives.
The Hudson River, downtown Manhattan, was literally pouring into the ground zero site. All the infrastructure we have in this city is below ground. We don't have any built-in pumping capacity in the tunnel system. The electrical equipment in many cases is in the tunnel system, and now you have a serious problem. But I would expect a situation like this to recur, and I think we need a systemic solution long term. As New Yorkers, we've gone through dark times before, and we know struggles and we know crisis. And we come back, and we come back even stronger. We work together, we work as a team. And the challenge here for us is not just to build back, but to build back better than before. Climate change is a reality. Extreme weather is a reality.
New York is located on the East Coast and faces a high risk of storms. It also has a geographic feature called the New York Bight, which serves as a funnel for storm surges. So with the location and the geographic feature, New York had to be prepared for hurricanes and storms. As a result of this, the city created the Coastal Storm Plan, the CSP. This outlines the response plans in events such as Hurricane Sandy. The Coastal Storm Plan was also tested by another Hurricane Irene 14 months prior to Sandy. It tested areas in equipment, training, communication, and management. And because of the recent Hurricane Irene, New York's preparedness for Sandy was improved. Though they were prepared with the weather warnings in the CSP, the magnitude of Sandy did exceed the city's expectations. Mitigation. So in response to Hurricane Irene, amendments were made to the Coastal Storm Plan to provide greater mitigation strategies for future hurricanes, such as Sandy. After reviewing Irene's after-action report, revisions were made to the general and healthcare evacuations. These updated the evacuation zones and prevented the loss of many lives. However, Sandy significantly exceeded these boundaries still. These amendments also improved communication, delivery of supplies, shelter management, and labor deployment. All these amendments to the Coastal Storm Plan greatly mitigated the impact of Hurricane Sandy. Response. As late as October 24th, Sandy was predicted to turn east over the Atlantic Ocean. However, 2 days later, it changed its course and headed west right into the New York Bight. Every day leading up to when Sandy hit, New York's Mayor Bloomberg had meetings with weather, transportation, and state officials. These meetings, along with the worsening weather conditions, led the Office of Emergency Management to activate the EOC on October 26th. 2 days later, on the 28th, an emergency evacuation was ordered for the low-lying coastal areas in the 5 boroughs. And on the 29th, New York was hit by Hurricane Sandy. Knowing that the storm was headed in their direction, Mayor Bloomberg took action and activated the CSP. The city's response was reasonably effective as a result of the authorities' decision-making overall.
With recovery, the year prior, New York actually experienced Hurricane Irene, and recovery efforts were still underway from that hurricane. So there was a lot of work to be done in the recovery department. New York was definitely hit much harder this time around compared to the previous hurricane. There was more damage, more casualties, unfortunately. And Mayor Bloomberg saw to it that he appointed senior staff as borough recovery directors to work in each neighborhood. Their work included debris removal, generator placements, shelter operations, and food and water distribution to ensure that all the citizens were taken care of during their evacuation, that everyone was accounted for and safe. Okay, so now talking about resiliency. Preparation and recovery efforts were planned well in advance to the emergency using the CSP. Talking about the flatness principle now, more layers of command means it takes longer for information to disseminate. So Mayor Bloomberg, to remedy that, what he did was he just appointed each area a recovery director, which meant the information did not need to go through ranks of command, so that everything moved quicker and smoother. People were helped much faster. The high flux principle. Communities with greater resources are more resilient than communities with fewer. So New York had a population of 8.2 million, more community presence and resources available. So that did help. That did help with the whole emergency. Like, they did have a lot of resources. If this was a smaller place hit this hard by a hurricane, it might have been much harder to deal with.
In the incident command system, the span of control was huge in just New York alone, and the need for an expanded incident command system area combined with the integrated operations and the utilization of the multi-agency coordination system was imperative to successfully recover from the storm and returning to normal. The organizational structure for the operation response of Hurricane Sandy was set up as a geographic structure organized by the branches of resources with division for each affected area. This allowed for Incident Command of New York to sufficiently manage the span of control. One of the important critical tasks from the Incident Command system is to establish communication and control with the community, and Red Cross Hurricane app was very effective in warning and locating information to residents. The app was used to receive weather alerts and get information on Red Cross shelters, and with the warning released to the public of expected affected areas and preparation of resources, FEMA, or the Federal Emergency Management Agency, acted accordingly with the warning the President and mobilizing emergency operation commands and liaison officers to the areas expecting a hurricane and sending viable sources to the staging areas such as medical team and rescue operations teams.
Alright, so we came up with some recommendations to help remedy the problems that the city of New York ran into during Hurricane Sandy. First recommendation would be to expand the call-taking capacity so that everyone that calls, their call does get picked up and that they do get the help they need. Second recommendation is to update the evacuation protocols. People didn't know where the evacuation zones were. They didn't know if they should evacuate if it was that serious. But it's important that everyone is aware and that everything gets updated. So that is the second recommendation. And the third recommendation was to make sure that all of the critical infrastructure is protected so that when people need certain things to evacuate, they have it and that it's not a problem and it's not too hard to get. And I have a video here that kind of covers the problems that they ran into during the emergency, and it should help clarify everything.
It didn't take us very long to find absolute traffic chaos and gridlock in New York City today. Just take a look around us. Hundreds of cars stuck here at this neighborhood petrol station. Things are going absolutely crazy. People are angry, people are upset, they have to go to work across the city. This is what happens when the New York City subway system shuts down.
No. Stop! That's it. That's all we have to say. Do that now.
It's just frustrating because had the police monitor a little better, like these intersections, then the line would go smoother. But that's not the case, and people are just cutting each other off. And we all need gas, you know, and it's frustrating.
Wait. They're just over flooding the gas stations, and then police are trying to make order out of everything. Make some sense, you know? It's just too crazy.
Cars have to have 3 passengers to get into Manhattan. We're actually in Brooklyn right now. That means a lot of these commuters are going to be stuck for a really long time on this side of the city. Not only that, gas is in short supply.
So now we're going to be talking about overall response. For the city of New York and its surroundings, the overall response delivered results which were able to mitigate very violent factors. What assisted a positive overall response was the framework for all the plans. As explained in our emergency management classes, when we set objectives, you must provide a framework for mounting and organizing response and recovery efforts. The framework the city provided can be seen through the teamwork and efforts of the Office of Emergency Management, the New York State Department of Health, and countless efforts of bravery from emergency services, and many other organizations and administrations. Sheltering logistics and operations were also included in the response, which was able to administer 2.1 million shelf-stable meals, more than 1.5 million prepared meals, and more than 1 million bottles of water, which is very respectable. The city of New York showed just how predominant they could be with a great response, which assisted the main factor in any disaster, the preservation of human life. So now we're going to be talking about some unique observations. So Hurricane Sandy was a very unique and one-of-a-kind storm. Some people even dared to call it the perfect storm. This is because all the factors to create a perfect tropical hurricane, such as Hurricane Sandy, were prevalent. This is also why it was so dangerous to places which were along the coast, such as New York. I'm not sure who here is very interested in stock trading or the market, but Hurricane Sandy was also able to shut down the market for 2 whole days. This hasn't been done unexpectedly ever since the terrible terrorist attack 9/11. As you all may also know, disasters are never cheap, and this one ended up cracking quite the bill. There was roughly $70.2 billion in damages, and around 650,000 homes were destroyed and damaged. This is why it's also up there on the leaderboard as the 4th costliest hurricane in the history of the US, which is very surprising since it was such an extreme storm. It just shows you the magnitude of other hurricanes which hit the US after Hurricane Sandy, which took its leading spot. So, planning, preparing, and responding is never an easy task for a disaster of this scale. It's not every day where municipalities such as New York and its constituents are hit with a hurricane of this magnitude. The quick reaction from the Emergency Management Center and organizations such as United Operations Resource Center was able to save many lives. Systems like the Coastal Storm Plan, which was discussed, was able to mitigate the damage done by Hurricane Sandy as well. The City of New York did a great job in this case, but there is always room for improvement through recommendations and further lessons taught by Hurricane Sandy. As we all know, emergency planning and response is crucial in saving lives. That's why studying cases such as Hurricane Sandy is the pinnacle of first-class emergency edification. This is where we conclude our presentation, though. Thank you guys for being patient and listening to what we had to say on Hurricane Sandy. Thank you.